Hey guys, welcome to Expanded History and enjoy the episode. On the dark and rainy night of October 24th, 1942, during the Battle for Henderson Field, a regiment of about 3,000 battle-hardened and determined Japanese soldiers from the Imperial Japanese Army's Sendai Division, using machine guns, rifles, grenades, and mortars, launched a ferocious assault against the tightly defended positions in the deep jungles of the Lunga area held by the outnumbered American forces. For the next 2 days and nights, these highly contested positions, held by a few units of the 1st Marine Division, would be ferociously assaulted by an onslaught of Japanese forces determined to kill American soldiers. During the next 2 long nights, amongst the overwhelming rifle and heavy caliber fire, one individual, one Marine, would stick out amongst the rest and answer the call of heroism. Using only his 1917 Browning belt-fed machine gun and his Colt 1911 pistol, he was able to hold his defensive positions for the next 2 nights. As the fighting slowly started to cease, and the smoke from the guns slowly dissipated in the air, more friendly reinforcements started to pour in to help the exhausted defenders. As these reinforcements started to slowly make their way deeper into the thick jungle, they would come to a baffling discovery of what they saw. In front of them were rows and rows of dead Japanese soldiers scattered opposite of the machine gun position, being virtually annihilated, with one particular Marine left standing. This is the true and amazing story of Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone. When we think about certain individuals and heroes of the Second World War, none rings louder yet quieter than Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone and his heroic actions performed on that fateful night of October 24th, 1942, during the Battle of Guadalcanal in the Pacific Theater. Born on November 4th, 1916, to the parents of Salvatore and Dora Basilone in Buffalo, New York, John would be the 6th child attending this family. In 1918, the Basilone family would eventually move to Renton, New Jersey, 1 hour away from New York, where John would eventually grow up and attend St. Bernard School. After completing middle school at the age of 15, John would drop out prior to attending high school, where he would end up working as a golf caddy at the local country club for a few years before deciding to join the military. In 1934, at the young age of 17, Basilone would end up enlisting in the United States Army, being assigned to the 16th Infantry at Fort Jay, New York. After his initial enlistment with the Army, John Basilone would eventually decide to join back into the Army and was assigned to the 31st Infantry, where he would be stationed in Manila, Philippines, and in fact earned the nickname Manila John. While being stationed in the Philippines, John would fight as a light heavyweight prize fighter, going undefeated in 19 fights throughout his time being stationed there. After completing his 3-year enlistment, John Basilone would be dishonorably discharged from the Army in 1939, where he would end up working as a truck driver for a few months. In July of 1940, sensing war was coming, John would enlist back into the military, but only this time with the United States Marine Corps. After completing his 13 weeks of basic military training from Parris Island and Specialist School, John Basilone, now a sergeant, would be stationed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, but following the bombing of Pearl Harbor and America's introduction into World War II in December of 1941, Sergeant Basilone would be headed to the Pacific Campaign as a section leader of a weapons company attached to the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. On August 7th of 1942, Allied forces, predominantly the United States Marine Corps, consisting of the 1st and 2nd Marine Division, would launch the first major land offensive against the Empire of Japan and the Pacific Theater, known as the Guadalcanal Campaign and codename Operation Watchtower. In August of 1942, U.S. Marines, with Basilone's battalion, landed on the island of Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands and captured Henderson Field, a strategically important airstrip from Japanese forces occupying the island, denying them crucial air access and control. Following the next 2 months, only a single U.S. battalion of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, commanded by the infamous Lieutenant Colonel Louis B. Polar, stood between the determined Japanese forces and the strategically important airfield. Sergeant Basilone was in command of an outfit of 16 other Marines, where for the first month, he would set up 2 defensive emplacements in the deep and rugged jungles with 4 heavy machine guns consisting of 2 1917 Browning water-cooled belt-fed machine guns with the task of defending Henderson Field and the Lunga area north of the airfield. At 2200 hours, or 10 o'clock, on the first rainy night of October 24th, 1942, Sergeant John Basilone would receive an urgent telephone call from his outpost reporting that a heavy concentration of Japanese forces was headed directly towards their position. This would be the Japanese' last attempt to take the Marines' position and the airfield. By the time Sergeant Basilone hung up the phone, their position was immediately fired upon by a concentrated machine gun fire as well as grenades and mortars being thrown over their position. Immediately, Sergeant Basilone, accompanied by a few Marines, rushed to the two 1917 Browning belt-fed machine guns located on the left flank of their defensive position and opened fire on the incoming Japanese forces opposite of them. While engaging Japanese forces, two of the machine gun positions on the right flank of their defensive position would be put out of action, swarmed by Japanese forces. Without hesitation, Sergeant Basilone got up and grabbed one of the Browning belt-fed machine guns, which weighed about 91 pounds, and repositioned himself with two other Marines on the right flank of the machine gun section. While running 30 yards to the position, Sergeant Basilone would stumble on a party of 9 Japanese soldiers on the trail in front of him, and without hesitation would open fire on the Japanese soldiers using the Browning belt-fed machine gun that he had. Following suit, Sergeant Basilone and the two other Marines would finally make it to the machine gun position on the right flank and would set up the handheld Browning belt-fed machine gun and immediately started returning fire on the incoming Japanese soldiers scattered all around them. Under constant heavy caliber fire in the pitch dark, Sergeant Basilone disassembled and put back one of the damaged machine guns while Japanese forces attempted to overrun their position. In his own words, Sergeant Basilone would write in his diary, "The Japs kept charging. The rain had stopped and the moon was just coming out, and they could see them when they got up to the wire in front of our position, about 30 feet away from us. We can hear them too. Every time they started to charge, they'd scream, 'Marines, you die.'" As the heavy fighting continued through the night, one of the 4 Marines in the machine gun section was wounded, requiring Sergeant John Basilone to improvise. He took command and ordered one Marine to reposition on the right flank and the other Marine on the left while simultaneously firing both machine guns. Rolling back and forth in the wet, muddy ground under intense fire, Sergeant Basilone would continuously open fire with a burst of rounds with one of the machine guns and roll to the other and open fire with another burst of rounds, completing this throughout the night, repeating this until both machine guns turned piping red. Realizing that both guns were out of ammunition, Sergeant Basilone got up, tossed his boots, and ran 150 yards through contested Japanese lines in order to retrieve the much-needed ammunition, engaging and killing contested Japanese soldiers with his Colt 45 pistol and machete. When Sergeant Basilone returned to the machine gun position, he reloaded both guns and continued opening fire and engaging the onslaught of Japanese forces all around him, reportedly killing 38 enemy soldiers single-handedly. Private First Class Nash W. Phillips would report that Basilone had a machine gun on the go for 3 days and nights without sleep, rest, or food. He was in a good emplacement and was causing the Japanese lots of trouble, not only firing his machine gun, but also using his pistol. For the next 2 nights, Basilone would continue to run from position to position, distributing much-needed ammunition while simultaneously repelling waves of Japanese soldiers. At around 5 o'clock in the morning, when the fighting slowly started to cease and the smoke from the guns slowly dissipated in the air, reinforcements from the 16th and 31st Infantry started to make their way to Basilone's position in the deep jungle, and to their surprise, would find rows and rows of dead Japanese soldiers scattered opposite of Basilone's machine gun position, being virtually annihilated. Following the next few days, it would be reported that over 1,000 Imperial Japanese soldiers from the Sendai Division lay dead from the major assault on Henderson Field, with several hundred also being wiped out opposite of Basilone's defensive gun positions. For his heroic actions performed on that fateful night in Guadalcanal, John Basilone was awarded the nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor, signed by Franklin D. Roosevelt in October of 1942. Shortly after receiving the Medal of Honor, John Basilone, now a gunnery sergeant, was ordered back to the United States from the Guadalcanal campaign and was ordered to help participate in the War Bonds Tour to encourage raising money for the war effort overseas. Despite feeling an overwhelming sense of duty to return to the battlefield with his brothers in arms, John Basilone would decide to take part of the war effort at home. On September 19, 1943, John Basilone would receive a hero's welcome back in his hometown of Rayton, New Jersey, where a parade was held in honor of him. For the next year, John Basilone would tour all over the United States with politicians and celebrities, raising money for the war effort overseas, while also gaining a celebrity status of some kind. Over time, Basilone, although feeling humbled and grateful for what he was doing, had a deepening sense of duty to return to the battlefield with his brothers in arms. On December 27th of 1943, Basilone, after many failed attempts, including turning down a commission to be an officer in the United States Army, was finally granted approval to return to the Pacific Theater, where he was sent to Camp Pendleton, California for training. This is where he would eventually meet his future wife, Lena May Rigi, who was also a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps' Women's Reserve, where they would end up marrying on July 10, 1944. Shortly after Basilone's wedding, and requested return to the Pacific Theater, Basilone was assigned to Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 27th Regiment, 5th Marine Division, where his company would be the first to land on Iwo Jima, held by 20,000 battle-hardened Japanese soldiers fortified on the small island. At 8:59 in the morning, on February 19, 1945, Basilone and his unit would land on the deep volcanic dunes of Iwo Jima, where serving as a machine gun section leader on Red Beach 2, located south of the island, Basilone and his unit would receive heavy machine gun fire from fortified positions opposite of the landing beach. While under continuous heavy caliber fire, Basilone, without any regard to his own safety, got up and maneuvered himself around Japanese positions, exposing himself to continuous heavy caliber fire until he was on top of one of the fortified positions, pinning his unit down. Using only grenades and demolitions on him, Basilone single-handedly destroyed the entire strongpoint and its defending garrison. Immediately, Basilone ran all the way back onto the landing zone and led 20 Marines off the opposed beach, where he and his fellow Marines fought their way towards Airfield No. 1, located north of Red Beach 2. On his way there, Basilone noticed the lone Sherman M4A3 medium tank stuck in an enemy minefield under intense mortar and artillery barrages. Without hesitation, Basilone got up and ran towards the lone tank, guiding it through the minefield to safety despite the heavy concentration of weapon fire from the Japanese forces on his exposed position. Throughout the initial Battle of Iwo Jima, Basilone would continue to fight and advance towards enemy positions scattered north of the island until eventually he moved along the edge of the airfield, where he would be struck by a burst of shrapnel from a mortar, killing him. As the word started to spread among the Marines across the island that John Basilone had been killed, it was reported that his death rallied the Marines on the airfield to advance and charge the heavily defended Japanese positions, eventually capturing the island. News of John's death on February 19th did not reach his family until March 8th, where they would receive a telegram from the War Department stating, "Deeply regret to inform you that your son, Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, United States Marine Corps, was killed in action February 19th at Iwo Jima, Volcano Islands, in the performance of his duty and service to a country. Please accept my heartfelt sympathy, General Alexander Vandergrift." For his actions on that fateful day, Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone would receive the Marine Corps' second highest decoration for valor, the Navy Cross. He was eventually buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, with full military honors. Although Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone's actions stopped that fateful day, his legacy and impact continues today. Every September, in his hometown of Rayton, New Jersey, there is a parade that is held in honor to pay respects for him and his family. Additionally, there is a large monument of him holding his distinct 1917 Browning belt-fed machine gun in Somerset County, which you can still visit today, standing tall and proud. And most notably, John Basilone's actions were depicted and shown on the riveting HBO TV series The Pacific, which you can still watch. From stopping an entire regiment of 3,000 battle-hardened and determined Japanese soldiers, using only his machine gun, pistol, and machete, to crossing enemy lines, to destroying fortified positions using grenades and explosives, to being the only Marine to win both the Medal of Honor and Navy Cross during World War II, this double dog has earned the title of being one of the deadliest Marines in United States Marine Corps history. This is the true and amazing story of Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone. Hey guys, I just want to quickly say thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe, and as always, keep learning.